Welcome back to Echoes of Middle-earth. Forged in secret, cloaked in fire, and imbued with the will of tyranny, it is the most coveted and feared artifact in the history of the world. It is the core of the Dark Lord's power, the object of a millennia-long quest, and the single greatest threat to all free peoples. We talk, of course, about the One Ring. But beyond its terrible influence and its golden simplicity lies a greater story. A story of deception, extraordinary artistry, and the staggering price of ultimate power. From what substance was this devastating weapon wrought, and how did Sauron, the great enemy, manage to pour his very essence into a single band of gold? To understand the creation of the ruling ring, we must first go back thousands of years to the Second Age, an era of burgeoning power and fatal wisdom. This story begins with the elves, the masters of craft who were unwittingly led down a path of betrayal by the Dark Lord himself. Sauron, the chief servant of the first Dark Lord, Morgoth, was a being of immense intellect and strength, possessing vast knowledge of the material world. As a spirit of the same divine order as Gandalf and the other wizards, his might was focused and weaponized, particularly through his mastery of smithcraft. Sauron recognized that the elves, particularly the Noldor, possessed a skill in making things that surpassed almost all others, yet their hearts were not entirely at peace. They desired both to remain in Middle-earth, which they deeply loved, and yet to enjoy the bliss and power of the distant West. This powerful and subtle desire became the precise weakness Sauron exploited. He appeared to them not as a fearsome warlord, but as a fair and wise counselor, adopting the deceiving name Annatar, the Lord of Gifts. He came to Eregion, the land of Holly, which lay near the great dwarven city of Khazad-dûm, or Moria. There, in the elvish city of Ost-in-Ethel, the greatest craftsmen of the age were gathered. The Elven-smiths of Eregion were deceived, believing Sauron was aiding them to enrich Middle-earth and raise the elvish people to a higher stature of power and knowledge. Under his influence and guidance, they reached the height of their skill, learning much of the Dark Lord's lore. The grand result of this collaboration was the forging of many rings of power. Among these artifacts were the three greatest and most potent, the rings of fire, water, and air, named Narya, Nenya, and Vilya. These were forged by Celebrimbor, the Lord of Eregion, alone, without Sauron's direct touch. But all these rings, both the greater and the lesser, were forged using the dark knowledge Sauron had shared, and thus they were all subject to the single master ring he secretly planned to create. While the elves believed they were creating tools for healing and preservation, Sauron was preparing the ultimate act of magical tyranny. He retreated to his ancient stronghold, the land of Mordor, long before his dark shadow was recognized. The place he chose for the final forging was Orodruin, the Mountain of Fire. It was a mountain he had selected years before, using the raw, terrible heat that welled up from the heart of the earth for his sorceries and forging. It was here, in the midst of his kingdom, that Sauron completed the One Ring. The ring was fashioned out of pure, solid gold, yet its material was unlike any other. It gained its unique and dreadful nature because Sauron let a great part of his own former power pass into it. This infusion of his being meant that the ring would last only so long as Sauron's strength endured, and it made the ring a thing of surpassing potency. The physical durability of the artifact reflected this divine infusion. It was harder than tempered steel and could not be destroyed by conventional means. Not a hammer or a forge in the Shire, nor even the greatest anvils of the dwarves could damage it. And while some believed dragonfire might consume the lesser rings of power, even the fire of Ancalagon the Black, the mightiest dragon, was deemed insufficient to harm the ruling ring. The essence of this creation meant that the ring was fundamentally entwined with the physical world through the spirit that animated it. Sauron was creating not merely a weapon, but a focus for his spiritual life. By externalizing a great portion of his inherent power, he amplified his ability to dominate Middle-earth, securing a tangible physical link to his might that could endure even if his physical form were destroyed. But this choice carried a unique vulnerability, one that ultimately led to his doom. The ring could only be unmade in the one place where that terrible foundational power resided, the fire of Orodruin itself, the very place it was forged. The final, chilling step in the creation was the inscription. At first, the ring appeared perfectly plain and smooth. However, Sauron set specific marks upon it, and the presence of this hidden script was reported in ancient lore. When subjected to the heat of fire, the hidden script would appear, shining as clear as red flame. The letters used were Elvish in an ancient mode, but the language they conveyed was the dark, foul, and uncouth black speech of Mordor. This inscription was the core statement of the ring's purpose and the true nature of the Dark Lord's tyranny. The words were first heard by the Elven-smiths of Eregion from afar as Sauron placed the ring on his finger, revealing his betrayal and their ruin. It spoke 2 lines of a verse known in Elven lore: one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. The meaning was unmistakable. The ring was designed to rule all other rings of power, bringing them and their wielders under the Dark Lord's total dominion. Sauron intended that while he wore the Master Ring, he could perceive all the things done by means of the lesser rings and govern the thoughts of those who wore them. The elves were not easily deceived. The moment Sauron put on the One Ring, they immediately became aware of him and quickly took off the 3 rings they had forged, saving them from his direct control. These 3 rings remained unsullied, untouched by Sauron's hand. But the fate of the 3, and indeed of all beautiful things maintained by the elves, was still inextricably linked to the One. If Sauron recovered his lost ring, the power of the 3 would be laid bare, and everything wrought with them would turn to their undoing. For many ages, the ring remained hidden, escaping Sauron's knowledge. Its loss created a fundamental weakness in the Dark Lord, preventing him from fully rebuilding his power and asserting his total rule. It was lost in the great river Anduin after Isildur, who claimed it as recompense for his slain kin, was ambushed. It slipped from Isildur's finger as he swam, betraying him and avenging its maker. This act of creation, pouring so much of his spiritual essence into a physical form, meant that if the ring were ever destroyed, Sauron would be utterly vanquished. He would lose the best part of his strength, becoming merely a spirit of malice that could not again grow or take shape. His entire design rested upon the object's survival. Sauron never conceived that anyone who found the ring would willingly seek to destroy it. His entire strategy, his malice, and his understanding of the world were measured only by the desire for power. He could not fathom that the weak, the hobbits, who bore the ring, might resist the urge to wield it. But the final act of destruction required the single catastrophic location of its forging. The journey to the cracks of doom in Orodruin was the only path that could put the ring beyond the enemy's grasp forever. The creation of the One Ring stands as the ultimate paradox of power in Middle-earth. It was conceived in pride and malice, forged through mastery and deception. Yet within its simple golden band lay the concentrated power of a divine being. Sauron's desire for absolute control led him to bind his spirit to the fate of a single object, and in doing so, he created the only means by which he could be utterly destroyed. Thank you for joining us on Echoes of Middle-earth as we uncovered the terrifying truth of the ring's making. The ring was not merely an instrument of darkness, but a physical manifestation of a tyrant's soul, destined to drag its maker down into the depths of fire from whence it first arose.